Alright guys, welcome back to another episode of Crossing Swords. I'm Andrew.
And I'm still Jake. I'm going to make that joke every time.
Yeah, you will.
Right? Yeah, I will.
Alright, this week is a bit of a change of pace and it's probably going to be a longer one. I mean, we'll probably push towards the hour mark in this one, I'd imagine. But this week we wanted to discuss mental health.
Brace yourselves.
Yeah. Just sort of stats and then our own experiences, and we've even had a conversation with someone who emailed into us anonymously with their experiences in being in a relationship where both people suffer from depression and other issues and sort of the struggles that brings along as well. So it's going to be potentially a bit of an emotional one, definitely quite deep and maybe a little bit raw as well.
You're definitely going to know us in a way that you didn't know us before.
Yeah, we're going to be quite open with you as well, because that's the whole point of this, is that we want people to be more open and more honest about what they're going through day to day.
So we're going to start with just by throwing some stats and figures at you. Brace yourselves, and we're just going to sort of go through those and talk about those briefly.
Yeah, I mean, the first one I went on was the Samaritans website, which I was surprised to find out they are the only organisation that collates all of the suicide statistics for the UK and the Republic of Ireland. So here we go. In 2017, which just before I start, there are no figures available for 2018.
No, they take a little while to collate.
Yeah, I would have got them if I could, so I'm going off for 2017 and some earlier years as well. But in 2017, 6,213 people in the UK and the Republic of Ireland died by suicide. In the UK, 5,821 were in the UK and 392 in the Republic of Ireland. And in the UK, men are 3 times more likely to die by suicide than women. In the Republic of Ireland, men are 4 times more likely than women. In Northern Ireland, suicide is higher than the rest of the UK and Republic of Ireland in terms of the proportion of people that do it. And in 2017, male suicide dropped and is at its lowest for 30 years, but however, in 2017, 75% of suicides were men, as opposed to 25% being women.
It's a big swing.
That is a massive swing.
And it's very much in keeping with, because in preparation for this, we've sort of been talking with people, and we've been talking with mental health care professionals, who very much suggest that males are far more, before they do anything, they reach a point of action.
Yeah.
Which means that either they seek help, or they act on it, self-harm or suicide.
Yeah.
But they're far more likely to reach a point of action before they do anything.
Yeah.
I know that seems like a weird thing to say, they reach a point of action before they take action, but women are far more likely to take preventative steps.
Well, they're more proactive.
They're far more proactive.
Yeah, men are far more reactive, and it's sort of, from the stats, it goes one way or the other.
Yeah.
Whereas with women, I feel like there's a breaking point earlier.
I think women are much more in tune to picking up the signs. Not all women, and of course...
No, there's always going to be outliers.
But I think as a general rule, not to kind of generalise in such a way, but women are far more... It's a culture. I think it's part of the culture.
Yeah, definitely.
Women are encouraged to kind of... I know this sounds like a weird thing to say, but they're encouraged to have feelings.
Yeah.
And sometimes in a bad way, because women react and they're like, oh, you're just being over-emotional.
Yeah.
But men aren't encouraged to have...
No, I think it is starting to... I'd like to think it's improving, but nowhere near enough.
No.
But I do think that the general attitude is that men are supposed to be men and stronger and just get by.
Yeah.
I've got some more stats. For men, between the age of 20 and 49, suicide is the most common cause of death.
And has been for a while.
Yeah, and I mean that in itself is frightening. That really is. And I've got some stats on mental health in general. In 2013, 8.2 million people were diagnosed with anxiety. But with anxiety in particular, it is far more common amongst women than men, and in fact they're twice as likely than men to suffer from anxiety.
And not to delve into it, because I don't think we are in a position to delve into it, but just to ponder, again, is that partly because of this prejudiced view of women versus men in terms of the diagnosis, in terms of men are far less likely to seek out a diagnosis, but also, are women going to be more open enough to be able to be diagnosed?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a case. I think that's definitely true, to be fair. With depression in 2014, 19.7% of people in the UK 16 and above showed signs of anxiety or depression, which was a 15% increase on 2013.
Yeah, not to stress too much, but I mean, if you look at social media, and listen, there's no doubt that social media has not had the most positive impact on this stuff in terms of anxiety, because it's people painting pictures of lives.
There's far more pressure now.
It's people painting pictures of lives that they don't have.
No.
This perfect life, and you're looking at it thinking, I don't have that. Well, nor do they. They're just presenting it. But because I know, speaking to another counsellor who works with a lot of teenagers and stuff, they do cite this kind of pressure to present the perfect life, or to live the perfect life.
It's all amazing.
And it's something that has always existed, but definitely social media has made it far more prominent.
Yeah.
The other thing as well that I was going to say is if you look at social media, actually there's a lot more, the kind of the latest generation, Gen Z or whatever, are far more, you see a lot of dark humour, and we're both fans of dark humour, it's a great way of expressing yourself, but there's a lot of dark humour that points towards having anxiety, and also build around school. I think that the young people really feel a lot of pressure on school, and they don't feel like school is there for them. They feel like they have to perform to bring up the school's numbers or whatever.
Yeah.
And I do see a lot more of that than I used to.
Yeah, I think a lot of society now is about box ticking, and how many of these boxes can you tick, and how impressive can you be to everyone else, regardless of actually what you want as a person. And then there was some more stats that I found on mind.org, which was sort of giving how many people in 100 for certain disorders and mental health issues there are in the country that are suffering from it. Now, generalised anxiety disorder, 5.9 people in 100 suffer from it. Depression, 3.3 people in 100 suffer from it. Suffering from phobias, 2.4 in 100. OCD, 1.3 in 100. Panic disorder, 0.6 people in 100. And post-traumatic stress disorder, also known as PTSD, 4.4 people in 100 suffer from it. Psychotic disorder, 0.7 in 100 people suffer from it. Bipolar disorder, 2 people in 100 suffer from it. Antisocial personality disorder, 3.3 people in 100 suffer from it. Borderline personality disorder, 2.4 people in 100 suffer from it. And then there was some more stats underneath, which was suicidal thoughts. 20.6 people in 100 suffer from suicidal thoughts. Suicide attempts, 6.7 people in 100 attempt suicide. Self-harm, 7.3 people in 100 suffer from it. And I think the most frightening one out of all those stats has got to be the suicidal thoughts. 20.6 people in 100 have suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I feel really uncomfortable saying this, but that's the point, is to be open. But I have had one suicidal thought in my life. I was a teenager. High school was not a fun experience for me. It shaped me really negatively, and a lot of the shit that I'm carrying now came from that period. But I did have a suicidal thought, in the same way that the typical suicidal thought comes about. You say, I don't want this. I just want out. I don't care what the out is. But it didn't last long, because I thought of my family, and I thought they didn't deserve that. The suffering that they would go through, they absolutely didn't deserve that. And I sort of, in a way, sort of turned myself into a bit of a martyr in that thing of like, I'll suffer for them almost. But it's interesting, because since I sort of had that thought and dismissed that thought, I've never had the single thought again. It's almost like a line I know I won't cross. It's like my Batman line. It's like I can go right up to the edge of that in my lowest lows, but I know that no matter what happens, I will never go over that edge.
No, and I'll be honest. Recently, with my depression, and I never quite understood people wanting to die, or to die by suicide. And I was at work one day, sort of on the brink of my breakdown I've had recently, and I had my first suicidal thought, just thinking, God, wouldn't it just be fucking easier if I wasn't here anymore? Not have to feel like this, not have to deal with any of this, and it was incredibly frightening, and it shook me, to be honest. But then, a bit like yourself, I thought to myself, what would the after effects be? Because I think that is what goes through your head. What would happen afterwards?
It's certainly what went through my head.
And I think, and this isn't being big-headed, it's just the pain it would leave behind for those.
I'll tell you what's really interesting, and I'm just sort of reacting to it now, because that's sort of what I do. I very rarely talk about my own feelings, and so when I do, that's when I have a chance to react to them. But what I've just noticed in myself is that, because I do have a lot of, I don't know how you'd phrase it, sort of sufferer's guilt. I don't feel like I suffer enough to class myself in with those people that genuinely suffering. And so when I said I had the suicide thought, and I thought about the after effects, part of me thought, genuinely, there was a little voice in my head that went, yeah, but if you're thinking about the afterthoughts, you're not really committed to it, therefore you didn't really have a suicidal thought, which is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But like, that's genuinely the little voice in my head that sort of had that.
Yeah, that puts you down even more, that you weren't even committed to feeling like that.
You didn't really have to. Yeah. Don't lump yourself in with that. Don't big it up.
Yeah.
Because you didn't really. But I did, and I have to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
And that's part of the thing that I will talk about. We'll sort of get into our own personal stuff.
Yeah.
In a bit, but yeah.
But those were the main stats I found. But I think I don't know whether the increase in general of issues in our society in terms of mental health is because the awareness has improved.
It has.
And that people are getting encouraged to come forward, or if it is because it has gotten worse, or if it's both.
But I think, and we'll sort of come into it a little bit later on and off, but I think as well, part of it is what's happening now, the shift has been, in my opinion, is that we still live in a world where, and I know we said women are encouraged more to have feelings, they're sort of allowed them, but they're not, because they're kind of, if they have too many emotions, it's hysteria, it's their periods, it's their bodies, whatever.
Yeah.
I think we still live in a world where people, as a general rule, aren't encouraged to have feelings and emotions, but we sort of make allowances for if they go far enough to be diagnosed, it's sort of okay, it's like, okay, now you can talk, now you can express yourself a bit. But right up to that point, you don't have emotions and feelings. No. When you break and you get diagnosed, then okay, we'll talk about it. I think that's the shift. We're not allowed emotions. Oh, I've been diagnosed with a disorder. Okay, she's allowed emotions.
Yeah.
But no one else.
Yeah, there's very much
That's my opinion.
It sometimes can feel like, if you talk to people, it becomes a competition. Well, I'm suffering from this.
I absolutely know people.
And you're like, well, look, and one of my favourite quotes I ever heard from anyone was from Robert Webb, when he was talking about when he started suffering with depression and he went to see a counsellor and he was absolutely against it. And the doctor said to him, look, if you broke your leg and you go to A&E, there could be someone sat next to you with 2 broken legs, and then next to them someone with 2 broken legs and a broken arm, and then next to them someone with 2 broken legs and 2 broken arms. And he said, obviously there's always going to be people worse off, but you've still got a broken leg and you still need help. You're not going to walk out of A&E going, oh no, sorry, these guys need help more. Everyone suffers, and it's relative to everyone as well.
It's an interesting way to look at it.
You know, if you've got something wrong inside of you, not even wrong, because I do think that's sometimes the wrong way to word it.
It is.
If you're struggling.
And I think that's part of it, we still see it as wrong.
Yeah.
It's not. It just is. There's no right or wrong about it.
No, there isn't. And whatever you're feeling inside, no matter the severity, you should at least try and talk about it. And yes, there's going to be people worse off, but you're never going to win the 4 Yorkshireman War. Do you know what I mean?
No.
If you try and compare yourself to people in Africa that are starving, you're going to start making yourself feel guilty, because really, what have I got to be upset about? But you have got something to be upset about.
No, it's that thing of there's always a bigger fish, there's always someone worse off.
Yeah, but that's irrelevant in reality.
Just because they're worse
it's
doesn't mean
relevant.
you're not bad.
Yeah. it's all relevant to each person. You know, you're going through what you're going through, and it hurts, and it's hard.
I if I may use that as a jumping off point to kind of talk about myself a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
And my experiences is I absolutely feel like that. I've never allowed myself, or I never used to allow myself any kind of suffering, because, well, that's not real suffering. That person over there, that's real suffering. That's really happening. You've not got that. But part of the reason that I found myself in a really bad way for a while is that I was not connected to my emotions. So there was a real disconnect. I didn't know what I was feeling a lot of the time, and that not only is not good, but it frustrated me. It really, I think I spent a lot of, like an angry young man, just really frustrated that I was feeling something and I had no idea what it was. No idea what it was. And then when I did feel something, what I would do that's really unhealthy is I denied it. Because I'd look for logic. There is no logic. That's the thing. There is no logic to you. You feel what you feel. And I would look for logic and I'd say, well, there's no reason I should be feeling like that. I've, you know, things are actually going well, or I've got this going on, or blah blah blah. And I'd think, right, there's no reason for you to be feeling like that. And I'd just block it. I just wouldn't let myself feel like that. So I've got these built up all these emotions building up under the surface that I'm not letting out in any way. And it was really, really, really unhealthy for me. And I'm not good at talking about myself and my emotions, and that's come up in the past where I've had relationships break down. I don't necessarily mean romantic relationships, but relationships break down because I wasn't bringing quote unquote enough to the table. And so, you know, I can remember one person who I probably haven't seen for about, or spoken to for about 5 or 6 years, but I can remember them doing this thing where it was like you go, I go kind of thing. I'll share something, you share something, and I wasn't sharing anything, or I certainly wasn't diving into myself enough to share something really personal. And it sort of exploded one day, and it's like, you're not, you know, I'm doing all the sharing here, and it was sort of like, well, hold on, I never asked you to share, and if I'd have known it had been conditional, I absolutely never would have allowed you to share, because I don't want to share. I don't talk about myself, and I have these lows. They usually only last a couple of weeks, and it's weird to kind of talk about it, because I don't talk about it even, and you're probably the person I speak to most about this kind of stuff. Not that I speak to, but even you can admit or that I don't do a lot.
No, very limited.
But, you know, these lows, when they hit, they are low. They are really low. I feel hopeless. And that's the worst thing. You feel like there's no hope. You just feel completely unmotivated. You don't enjoy anything. I stop eating. I mean, if I were to look at it under the diagnosis, from a diagnostic perspective, I think you could definitely diagnose it. But that's the other thing, is I don't want to diagnose it, because I always used to think...
Do you feel like that means there's something wrong with you?
Well, no, I used to think there's something wrong with me. I used to think, well, what's the point though? What changes? I've got a label to put on it, but nothing changes. My experiences don't change.
I mean, not to interrupt you.
No, do interrupt. It's a discussion.
What I would say is sometimes having a label to it helps, because I think sometimes if you don't and you're just suffering alone with it, it's very easy to get more and more hopeless, because you don't see a way out of it, because you don't know what it is. So sometimes if you're told it's, I don't know, like manic depression, anything like that, you can go, alright, well, there is steps that can help with that. You may never get to an end point of it, but there's a journey you can go on with it, whereas I feel sometimes if you don't seek out help and sometimes get diagnosed, and I do think diagnosis can be dangerous at times, because people do get diagnosed with the wrong things.
And I mean, there's a lot of crossover in the DSM. I haven't read the DSM-5, which is the latest one, but in the DSM-4 there is a lot of crossover with a lot of conditions.
Yeah, there is, but I feel like it's the only way forward sometimes. Because if you just sort of sit with it, you're running the risk of just sitting with it and never going anywhere with it, and it just gets worse.
And I think that's what I did for a long time, with all of my emotions in general. And I think the other thing about me as a kind of like an overview is that I'm very, very, or I used to be incredibly critical of myself, which obviously knocked my self-esteem and my self-confidence a lot. I mean, just to take one example, I tried a couple of years ago, I did try stand-up.
Yeah.
And in my mind, what I was expecting to do, and I don't, it's ludicrous to think this, that I was going to go up, deliver a great 5-minute set.
And get a standing ovation.
Yeah, maybe not quite standing ovation, but yeah, I thought that was going to be great. But, the thing is, it actually went fine.
Yeah.
The set actually went, in fact, it went better than fine. It was a decent performance. I forgot quite a lot of the material that I had, so I was sort of dragging bits out longer than they ever should have been dragged out. I forgot a lot of the jokes, which didn't help, but I did get some laughs, and I felt very much at home on the stage, and I had a lot of people afterwards. I don't know, I got laughs, blah blah blah, but I had a lot of people afterwards coming up and asking me if I had any tips for like where to perform and how to perform. And I was like, this is the first time I've done this. Now really I should have been looking at that and going, that's really encouraging.
That's because they obviously saw you must have felt comfortable on the stage.
I looked like someone who'd been doing stand-up for a while.
Yeah.
Which should have been really encouraging, but what I did was it didn't reach the heights that
you put for yourself.
Could have, that I set for myself. Therefore it was a failure, never do it again, and I haven't, and I want to do it again. I'm only now, after doing a lot of work to quieten the
critical side,
the critical voice, it's only now that I'm kind of getting back into wanting to do it. And musically speaking, obviously, I not obviously, I don't think I've ever discussed it, but I quite like songwriting as a hobby. Now, when I first started learning to play guitar, my intentions were to learn a few basic chords to be able to put together a very basic song, just the chords, the rhythm, the pattern, whatever, and express it that way. Now, and the problem is again with that critical voice is I'm always saying, I'm always in the next bit, so I'm always thinking, rather than stopping and appreciating where I am and saying, I can do this, I can do that now, I can play the basic chords.
You're still seeing where you can
my
get
voice,
to.
the critical voice in my head is going, yeah, but if you'd have worked harder, as you should have worked harder, you could be here, you could be at the next stage.
Yeah.
And that's where I want to be. I'm focusing on I want to be adding these little licks and these little... and that's stupid. You've got to be in the moment, and that's a big thing that we'll sort of talk about towards the end. It is about being in the moment and not thinking about
enjoying
what you haven't got.
the little successes, and sometimes they're not even little; they're quite big.
Yeah, that's it.
So the fact you've actually reached the point you wanted to get to initially, but that in itself is incredible. And there's nothing wrong with saying I still want to improve, but you should still accept. Wow, I'm really fucking proud of myself for achieving that.
Yeah, and here's the thing. So I started counselling about a year ago.
Yeah.
The lows got really low, and the other thing was I was suffering from panic attacks, and I still do, but less and less. They would come on. They weren't frequent, but I was so adamant that I wasn't suffering, and this sort of goes back to that thing of that guilt thing of almost like I'm not, that's a sufferer. I'm not a sufferer.
Yeah.
Not in a denial way, it's in a like, I don't want to overshadow you, I don't want to take away from you. But I was suffering panic attacks, and I never even considered it to be a panic attack. It never even crossed my mind that that's what it might be.
Yeah.
But it was only when I was having one at work once, and it was like, I'm gonna just out of my own curiosity, for whatever happened that day, I thought I'm gonna head up to the NHS website and I'm gonna see what is a panic attack, what are the actual symptoms of those like, and every one of them was like, fuck, that's it, that's what I'm having.
Yeah.
Right down to the amount of time that they last, to every single symptom. It was like, well, shit.
Yeah.
I'm having panic attacks, and I didn't even fucking realise that I was having panic attacks. And I think that was a switch. That was a moment where I was like, okay, I need to get help, because I was always on the edge of a panic attack. There was like something underneath, and it felt like if I took a deep enough breath, or if I just let it out, it would all come out.
Yeah.
And so I did seek out counselling, and I've done a lot of work in the last year to reduce that critical voice, which has made the biggest difference. I mean, this podcast would never have happened. We'd have done one, we'd have had like, 15, 20 listens or whatever we had.
Yeah.
And I'd have gone, it's better than I thought, but it's not enough. It's a failure, and we wouldn't have done it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have, I wouldn't have been up for doing more.
Yeah.
And it's a really interesting thing that particularly with the lows as well, and it's a really interesting one with depression. And again, I don't consider myself to have depression, although an argument could be made for a form of depression, or perhaps manic depressive-esque diagnosis. But I don't consider myself to have any of those. But one of the things, and one of the key things, symptoms of that, is a lack of motivation. It's a lack of drive, and it's a lack of self-care.
Yeah.
So you don't seek out care. I mean, I have, this week between you and I was having a bit of a low.
Yeah.
It was the back end of a low, so I've had a low and I've sort of on the rise out of it. And, but I didn't have the motivation. So, what happened was, I cancelled my accountant. I made up some bullshit excuse, but I just couldn't face it.
Yeah.
I was like, I just can't. And I'm still uncomfortable talking about me, and I realise I've done that for the last, 20 minutes, 15 minutes. But you'll realise as well is that I haven't actually gone that deep into myself. All I've done is listed things that, with the help of others, have been
but that's a
pointed
start.
out. It's a start, but it's not. I still don't like talking about myself, and I've always found myself so uncomfortable coming out of those sessions. And the funny thing is, with the critical voice as well, is I remember my first counselling session, and the first few in fact, and I came away and I kept thinking, you haven't shared enough, you haven't done enough, like you should be, why didn't you mention this?
Yeah.
Why didn't you, why are you still only talking about this? Why aren't you delving into this? And it's like, fucking hell, man. I need to ease up on myself. And I'm not there. The voice still comes in from time to time.
I would say you suffer from a disorder somewhere along the lines of Rome has to be built in a day.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you know what I mean?
I definitely set myself way too high standards and expectations. I think there's no doubt that is part of it, and I think an interesting thing with me as well, with my own sort of self-diagnosis almost, is that I think there's a certain amount of, and again, it's only meeting people with diagnosed conditions and seeing the parallels between them and myself that I'm able to say, yeah, maybe there's something to this.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not suffering as bad, maybe there's something to this. So, for example, when I was very young, I was a very happy, sociable child.
Yeah.
Then high school came, not a great time for me, and what I found actually is in sort of like my adult years, my early adult years, and now, I sort of suffer a little bit from a certain amount of social anxiety. There are a lot of times where, all the symptoms are there, and I cancel a lot of plans late on or last minute because I can't face it.
Yeah.
I can't do it. And you think, it's plans with friends, it's plans with people that I know really well, that I care about.
That you're comfortable with.
That I'm comfortable with, and yet I just can't build myself up to do it. And it's only talking to people who really suffer that I can see the parallels and think, yeah, maybe there is something. But it's interesting that the switch, that I used to be such a really sociable person, and really outgoing and I would come and talk to you, and now I'm like, don't talk to me. No one talk to me.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've seen it when we're on nights out and stuff, it's like, if someone joins the conversation, some random person, rather than being my usual self,
you recoil.
I recoil back into myself, and I'm very, very quiet, and I really almost don't want to be there.
Yeah.
But I do want to be there. I'm a little bit like a cat in that way. It's like I do want to be there, but I don't want to be there. So I sort of sit on the edge and be near it.
Try and be part of it, but not.
But not be part of it, yeah. And but the counselling has helped reduce the thing. Just having an hour, and I don't do it frequently. It's every sort of like few weeks that I do go. But just having an hour to talk about me And that's still not something I'm comfortable with. A year in or so, that's still something I'm comfortable with. But I had a moment recently where I was able to look back at the year I've had and actually see all the things I've done, and also realise that all those achievements, personal achievements and emotional achievements and actual physical achievements, all of those achievements have come in a year, and that's an incredible span for those things to happen. And then the kind of meta thought that came out of it, the idea that I was able to enjoy that and allow myself that win, was a really, really interesting and positive thing.
No, I think that's all brilliant, mate, to be fair.
And yet I'm still sitting here thinking, I haven't shared enough. I haven't delved enough. What should I be sharing into?
Well, you just need to tell that side of yourself to shut the fuck up.
Yeah, it's a really hard thing to get over, for sure. But we're getting there. But I think that's part of the thing as well, is over the years I've noticed that I could be diagnosed, for sure. I don't think I don't, as much as it pains me to say it, because I do feel like, oh, that's not me, that's someone else who is suffering. As much as it pains me to say it, I think if I was really truly honest with a GP, I don't think I'd struggle to get diagnosed.
No, probably not.
But I don't want to be, like I said, I don't want to be. I'm quite happy where I am for now. That might change, but it's not changing at the moment. I'm just focusing on pushing my own confidence. I mean, I am doing more and more things that are confident, and I'm recognising them.
Good.
And I'm allowing myself emotions. I'm feeling things, and I'm not just saying there's no logic to that. Shut up. I'm feeling things, and I'm letting myself feel them. Just be like, okay, just go with it for a bit.
Yeah.
And those are small changes. They seem small, but they're big changes. They make a big.
Oh, they're massive changes.
And they don't come overnight. But it wasn't necessarily hard work. I wouldn't say that, but I think that might be the critical voice saying you should have worked harder.
Yeah, I think sometimes with particularly mental health stuff, not saying recognise there's a problem, but recognise there's something to recognise.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a diagnosed thing,
no,
and that's kind of the whole point.
Just recognise there is something there.
Emotions, just accept your... No, it's a twofold thing. Acknowledge your emotions and accept them.
Yeah.
Acknowledge that they're there, know what they are, be able to recognise them at least on a base level, and then accept them. Don't say, no, I don't want that, or there's no logic to that like I did. You just accept it and say, okay, that's what I feel today.
Yeah.
And that's it. There's no more to it than that, and that makes a big difference. And I can say that personally.
Yeah.
It does make a huge difference. But that's me. That's my side of it anyway.
Yeah. Now it's my turn to open up. I mean, for me, until recently, I never really understood mental health issues, despite the fact I sort of had exposure to it throughout my life, through people I'm close to and relatives and just meeting people in general. And I definitely never understood the sort of suicidal thought sort of side of things and how you could get to that point. And it really does worry me that men it appears they're far more susceptible than women. Not that women don't struggle, of course they do, but I feel like with men it's far more definitive.
Because we're still in such denial.
Yeah. And that was definitely the case for me. And I would say it'd be unfair to claim things haven't improved, and society is improving, but there's still a lot of improvement to be had. And I think our world at the moment is built around time, money and convenience, and we never have enough time, very few have enough money, and we only have one thing available to try and negotiate any of it, which is convenience. And we try and do whatever's convenient to make our lives easier or to have more time or...
And I use the convenience, I know we mentioned it in the convenience episode, but with my sort of like that sort of social anxiety, I do use convenience to, like, I almost shop exclusively online because I don't want to have that interaction. I don't want to go...
No.
Shopping for the thing is fine and whatever, but it's actually getting to the till and having that interaction. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
But I definitely use it to avoid going out and doing things.
But as I was saying, I have been around a fair bit of mental health stuff throughout my life, including depression, anxiety, stress, OCD, just to name a few. And like I said, I never really understood it, but I think I never really had any comparison. It wasn't something you talked about with people, and I was young, and it wasn't something on, I suppose, the national talking list. You just didn't,
And it's still not. How often would I message you and be like, this is how I'm feeling?
Yeah, no, you just don't.
The answer to how are you is always, yeah, I'm alright.
And
how are you?
And if you have nothing to compare it to, you just think it's normal, And I've never judged anyone I've been around for suffering. I just never understood it. I think I accepted it intellectually, but in terms of like a visceral way, I never truly understood it until recently. Until about, it's over a year now. It was last May I lost my dad. And it was, looking back, a very long process in terms of him passing away. And it was over I would say probably 3 to 4 years. He slowly went downhill. And I won't bore everyone with the details, but in the end he'd lost over, I think it was around 50% of his body weight. And he had chronic liver disease, and basically his body was shutting down, and he passed away, bless him. And it was genuinely, and still is, the hardest thing I've ever been through. I was incredibly close with my dad. We had a very good relationship. I knew where I stood with him and what he thought and felt about me, and he knew the same in reverse. And he was a very large part of our family, and I think in the initial part, obviously you allow yourself to feel that hurt and to feel that grief. But I definitely think I sort of rushed back to normality, even though I took a month off of work at the time.
It wasn't enough.
It wasn't enough, and I think I sort of refused. I think after probably about a week or two, I sort of refused myself, looking back, to really feel it, and even now I haven't fully accepted it. And it was after and I went back to work, and I tried to juggle work, being there for my family and being there for my partner, whilst all trying to maintain this sort of persona of being stoic and immovable
But it had exactly the effect that I think we would have all thought it had.
unshakable, and yeah, it did. But that came from when I was a child. There was big personalities in my family that not necessarily suffered, but they were all encompassing, so the family focused on them, and so I learned at a very early age to be comfortable in my own company, to be quiet. If I was upset, I dealt with it. I was bullied for, I would say, the entirety of my school life until about sixth form, and even then it continued a little bit. And then I sort of went into the workplace. I started at 17 and then properly at 19. And I think I just focused on wanting to be the stable one of the family and not wanting to fall apart, and just dealing with things. And for the most part that worked, and until it came to something actually truly important. And then it got to about 6-7 months in of having lost my dad, and my partner was worried about me, and so was yourself. And both separately, and I know it wasn't a joint effort, although it wouldn't bother me if it was, both of you had individually, in the space of a day of each other, which was quite funny, both said that you were worried about me and that you thought I needed to try and do something to help myself, which I did. And I reacted quite quickly to it, because I think, for me personally, I would listen to someone I trust more than myself, if that makes sense. So I sort of took what you guys said, and I sort of sat with it for a day and thought about it, and I knew you were right, so I got in touch with my GP. He sort of went through that checklist of symptoms, and I was diagnosed with depression and put on antidepressants, and was put forward for bereavement therapy. After I would say about 3-ish months, I was offered the choice of CBT, which is cognitive behavioural therapy or group therapy. Now, nothing against CBT, but it didn't really sound like my cup of tea. Nor did
CBT, just to jump in, basically focuses on retraining your thoughts. It retrains your thought process. So it doesn't deal with the underlying problem as such. It doesn't deal with the emotions that sort of lead to it, but it deals with just reprogramming, recircuiting your brain a little bit. It's great for kind of getting through the day-to-day, but in terms of dealing with an actual problem or issue, it doesn't really handle it so much. So pros and cons things.
And I think that sort of was going the complete opposite way to what I was trying to deal with within myself in terms of actually dealing with things I'm feeling rather than just distracting myself with something else. And that may work for other people, and it's that, I suppose if you do it in the right way, it can be healthy, but I think for me personally, and I would say probably for men in general, I think we need to be more open rather than distracting ourselves.
Well, it's interesting that you've referred to it or see it as distracting yourself.
Yeah, well, I think that's normally the way I do things. So I think when I was sort of described what CBT was, I sort of thought to myself, well, that's sort of the opposite of what I'm going for at the moment. So I went to group therapy for 8 weeks, and to be honest with you, when I went into it, I was quite sceptical, and I didn't really put myself into it at first. But towards the last 2 or 3 sessions, I opened up more, and it sort of triggered, and obviously listening to other people and their experiences and what they said really resonated with me, and it brought up a lot of unresolved things that I'd never dealt with, like insecurities, bullying, things I experienced in my childhood. And I fell into a much deeper depression, which I'm still in. And since going through all of that, my work got more stressful, and between work, my grief, and what I can only describe as increasingly severe insecurities, I had what I can only describe as a breakdown, and have had suicidal thoughts. And I've, since all of this, had 2 increases on my antidepressants, and I'm now on what I believe is the maximum dose I can be on. And as of this point in time, I've seen my GP 2 or 3 times more, and the first time I asked to be signed off of work because I just couldn't cope, and she said to me that she thought work was a welcome distraction. I tried explaining to her that work is what's triggered it all and made it worse. So she begrudgingly gave me a week off of work as if that would magically cure the issue. And then had also told me off that I hadn't seen her for a while, after she was the one who told me not to come and see her for 6 months unless something changed. And it did change, and I came to see her. And I felt like I was made to feel guilty for that. I then came back a week later to see her to tell her I still wasn't right, and she again begrudgingly gave me time off, which was 2 weeks, and told me she wouldn't be giving me any more time off because I'd made proactive steps. I've chased up the group I was having my therapy with, and they're now going to do a new assessment on me, which I'm waiting for. I contacted another counselling organisation for bereavement, and I'm waiting to hear back from them, and I'm also going to get in touch with my employee assistance programme to see what they advise. And my doctor basically said to me, because I've taken proactive steps, she can't justify giving me any more time off.
Which is madness.
And I'm not, people may not believe this, but I'm not actually a confrontational person at my core, and so I just sort of sat there and nodded and agreed to what she said. And then when I walked out, I felt, you know, it is difficult, and you know, I'm not someone who usually asks for help, clearly, previously, and I have tried to embrace it, and I still really struggle with it. And I'm not someone who takes time off work. I mean, the last time I took time off work, I'd sprained my ankle, and I still went to work, but went home early a week before I was signed off with depression. But before that, it was 3 or 4 years ago when I had a hairline fracture on the same ankle, for which I was given nearly 2 months off for. But yet being depressed and on the maximum dose of antidepressants trying to help myself and asking for help, I'm told 3 weeks is all that can be justified, and I walked out feeling patronised, forgotten and let down. And I said something needs to change, because there are people who are far worse off than me, and if that's the level of support they're going to be given, then I genuinely worry for people.
And also, you're asking for help. That's what you get when you're asking.
Yeah, and I basically sat there and I felt like she basically said she didn't believe me. That's how it came across. And
not to get too distracted, but
yeah.
I have to say that I think that's because we both attend the same medical practice.
Yeah.
I believe that's. I don't know whether that's a symptom of the NHS, but it's certainly a symptom of that practice, because I've been in there before with physical symptoms, and I'm a bit of a hypochondriac in terms of. I mean, I found a lump once,
yeah.
and it took me 6 months to go and see it, to go and book an appointment, because I was like, it will sort itself, it will go away.
Yeah.
But I very much feel like they never listen to you. And they dismiss you very, very quickly.
No, and I was disappointed, because when I first went to see this doctor, she was very supportive and wanted to listen to me. But I sort of threw myself to her advice. She told me to wait for the group therapy, which I did. She told me not to come back unless something changed, which again I did. And then when I've come back and said, look, I can't do this anymore, I did feel quite let down. And like I said, I'm not a great believer in taking time off work, and I know there are people out there who abuse the system and lie to doctors and lie to their employers. But you know, I'm someone who works 45 hours a week usually on average. I don't take time off for being sick. I've gone to work when I've had it coming out of both ends, and you know, no matter what condition I've been in, short of not being able to walk, I normally go to work. So I'd like to say that speaks to the position I must feel in to go to a doctor and say I can't go. And it sort of struck me that there is still a long way to go in terms of...
And can I ask you a question?
Of course you can.
You don't have to answer it, obviously. How did you feel when you went and asked for help?
Awful. I felt even worse. I felt like a failure. And I felt... It's definitely a pride thing when I look at where I've come from, a bit like what you were saying about how confident you used to be and outgoing, and you know, it's a bit of a running joke in our group, but I was quite a centre point of the group at one point. I was one of the more lively figures, you know, I was always very outgoing and very confident, and I've lost all of that now. And I look at where I've fallen from, and it's hard not to beat yourself up about it. And having gone to a doctor and said I can't cope, it definitely hurt, and I definitely felt guilty, and like yourself I thought there are people worse off and I should be able to cope with this. But yeah, and it's just frustrating, because I felt like that doctor basically said to me, if I'd have sat around for that first week doing nothing, just feeling sorry for myself, she'd have been more inclined to help me than actually trying to help myself. Which just seems so backwards to me.
Yeah, me too.
And when I told my boss that, because obviously I let her know, I've been keeping in touch with her with my situation, and she's been incredibly supportive. She couldn't believe that the doctor had said that to me. So that's my employer that's been, and I know the position the store's in without me at my work, she has been far more supportive than a doctor that it doesn't affect.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah,
no, quite. Anything else you'd like to share, or? Yeah, I'm not fishing. I'm not saying you must.
No, I think I've covered most of it. I think if anything, I'd like to apologise to people over the years that I probably have been quite dismissive of, that were struggling, that were going through things, because I didn't understand what they were going through, and I couldn't understand how you could feel that low.
I'd say it's been both interesting and horrible to watch you relay things that I've felt in the past, because they're not nice things, and you don't want to see people feeling those things, particularly people you care about. Yeah. And to see you feel that, and on the one hand, it was kind of like, okay, we can communicate about this now because we've both experienced it, kind of thing. But the large part was, what a horrible thing to see someone else going through. But let's say now, we are both. Let's say you're someone who suffers. Well, what's it like then to live with someone who also suffers?
Yeah.
So we've had a listener
Yes.
reach out to us when we've been pleading and begging. Someone listened, someone answered the call, and they've spoken about, and we'll just use their pronouns. I don't think we need to give them fake names, do we?
No.
We'll just use their pronouns. But they've, this is a couple who do both suffer.
Yeah.
And what's it like living with that? Now, it should be clear that they didn't both reach out.
No.
She reached out.
Yeah.
So we haven't got his perspective to offer on it.
No.
But it's still, I think, worth talking about and mentioning.
But to be fair to her, I did think she was being fair in terms of her interpretation of it.
Oh, she wasn't. Yeah, she wasn't.
I definitely wouldn't say
one-sided.
she was slagging him off.
No, she wasn't biased or
No.
she was completely honest about both sides. But the overriding thing that we got from speaking to this listener is that it's very much the prevailing thing that only one of you can suffer.
Yeah.
Particularly at any given time, only one of you may suffer. And often that means one person takes a back seat.
And
And it's a voluntary back seat.
Yeah.
But it means that their mental health takes a hit. It means that they're not getting the attention that they need.
Yeah.
But it was a very interesting.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I do believe there is space in a relationship, romantic or otherwise, for both people to suffer and to have troubles. And I think it should be an unspoken negotiation of just, it should be an as and when sort of situations. If one of you's having a bad day or both of you are having a bad day, you just sit and share it.
But the other interesting thing that came from that conversation as well was that when he was having a bad day, quite often he would believe that she was unable to relate.
Yeah.
And here's where it gets really potentially unhealthy, is that he would sometimes make her feel guilty for things.
Yeah.
He'd be feeling bad about something and make her feel guilty about it. And she's already not receiving the attention that she needs.
Yeah.
And in this situation, she's the one that's taken a back seat, by the way. She's the one that's kind of, he gets a bad day, I don't.
Yeah.
But she's already not getting the attention, and if she's then made to feel guilty on top of that, that can be potentially harming. Now, it is also worth mentioning that they are mad for each other.
Yeah.
They are clearly in love, and as she sort of said to us, look, you wouldn't go through it if you didn't care about each other.
Yeah.
But interestingly, I think they can relate, because when we sort of said, do you think it would be better if one of you didn't suffer? I think the answer was sort of no, because you are in a much better position having gone through it.
Yeah, 100%.
Sort of as you were saying, where before you didn't really get it, but now you do. You're in a much better position to be able to, just because you know what, you sort of put yourself in their position and you're able to say, what would I need? And sometimes you need, it's a number of things. It's about reading it, but it's about communication as well. So it's about, if they're having a bad day, talk to them when they're having a good day and say, look, when you're in a bad mood, what are the signs that I should look out for that you need to be heard, that you just need to be, to talk? What are the signs that I should look out for that you just want to be left alone and you need some space? Because obviously they are two very different reactions to someone.
Yeah.
But you need to talk to each other to know that, I think.
Oh, 100%. But also you need to be able to learn from your partner. So with my partner, I'm not going to go into any details about her, but if she's having a bad day, I've learned over the last couple of years what to do and not to do through talking to her, and just from observing the reaction to my behaviours.
Trial and error almost.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the time, sometimes people don't know what they want, so I think it is sometimes you need to go through a process of trial and error, but absolutely talk about it. I mean, like I said, I'm someone who's quite comfortable usually in my own space, and normally I do tend to retreat into myself, which is a selfish thing to do, and it does leave your partner
feeling helpless.
Yeah, they just don't know what to do.
They don't. They want to help you.
Yeah,
but they feel like they can't.
But also at the same time, I think people need to know that sometimes there is nothing you can do. But sometimes just being with you, or in your presence
But sometimes
can
there
be
is as
enough.
well. So
Yeah.
here's the thing, and let's start sort of heading towards the wrapping up stage. And
Yeah.
let's start talking about tips. If you're with a partner and they're suffering, encourage them to do small things. Do them together. So even little things like just encouraging them to have a healthier meal. Just encouraging them to go for a little walk, to go to a small social event, or
Yeah.
even if it's just a pub with your friend, not necessarily pub, maybe alcohol's not the best thing in that
No.
situation, but just keep encouraging them to do small things, because those things do help. They are healthy things, and here's some of the things as well that you should do. Number one, the one and two are really obvious, and we should be doing them regardless of our mental health, but they do have a massive impact on it, and they are exercise and eating healthy.
Yeah.
You should be eating a healthy, balanced diet, and you should be exercising fairly regularly. That doesn't mean going to the gym 5 days a week, pumping
No.
iron. It just means go for a walk, go for a jog, whatever. Play a little bit of cricket or tennis or football once a week, something.
Yeah.
Other things are, like I said, do those little things. Go for a little walk, go and do a little activity, force yourself into them, because usually you find that actually they're not that bad once you get there. But
No.
it's the build up to it that makes it bad, particularly for those with social anxiety. Through my own experiences and through speaking to other people, when they're there, they're fine, they enjoy
Yeah,
it.
the reality's never as bad as
It's the build up that puts you off.
Yeah.
Other things are, and here's an interesting one, make a list of things to do for the day. And that involves, really small, menial stuff like having breakfast, having a shower, and tick things off as you go. And start small. Start with the little easy stuff. Maybe it's, I don't know, putting your socks away or something, and build right up to the bigger tasks. But get to the end of the day, and even if you don't tick off everything on that list, look at the list. Spend a few minutes just appreciating all the things that you have done that day.
One thing I do, particularly at the moment as I'm off work, is I will take myself round to a shop and pick up a paper or a pack of gum or just whatever it is, or a pack of cigarettes, just an excuse to get out of the house, have a walk and, get some fresh air.
Yeah, other things to be encouraged are the use of, so grounding as a technique. It works perfectly for someone having a panic attack or an anxiety attack. And it just involves naming to yourself maybe just three things you can smell, 3 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear. But it also works well for if you're getting carried away, you find yourself getting a bit overwhelmed, your thoughts are running away yourself, it's not quite an attack. Again, just ground yourself, just touch 3 things. 3 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell.
Okay. So would you physically go and touch those things and then smell those things?
Yeah, physically, so it'd be like right now I might be the chair, I can touch the chair, I can touch the table, I can touch my pen, I can smell the room, I can smell the pen, I can smell myself, or, I can hear the computer tower, I can hear, my own voice, and I can hear voices downstairs. And just those things like that actually have a surprising
bring you back
effect,
down to
bring you back into the room and into
Yeah.
the moment, and that's kind of what it's about.
Stop you
being
sort
in
of
the moment.
ruminating and going.
Because being in the
out of
moment
itself.
is always a healthier space than being
Yeah.
in the past or in the future. That's not to say you shouldn't remember the past and think of the past, and it's not to say you shouldn't be ambitious and planning for the future. But being in the moment is really key to a lot of being healthy.
I'd like to add one, if I may.
Yeah, do absolutely.
Meditation. I know it's a word that sort of puts people off because it lends itself to a sort of
Has some
spiritual side.
hippie connotations.
But in terms of meditation, it can literally just be sit comfortably for 10, 15, however long you want it to be, and just sit there and listen to your breathing and just clear your thoughts and just relax. It does help.
And interestingly, one of the things as well, the other thing is the use of a technique called mindfulness. And again, it's a sort of grounding is like a more specific type of mindfulness. It's just about being in the moment. It's about bringing yourself back to the moment. And interestingly, there's a lot of crossover with meditation and mindfulness. So one of the practices for mindfulness, for example, is to sit down, or really ideally sit down, close your eyes, take 10 very deep breaths in, very deep breaths out, nice and not not rush, just nice slow deep breaths in and out, and imagine yourself just kind of like shutting down almost. Start at the toes or whatever, and just feel yourself, force yourself to relax a little bit, and just really be aware of, as you said, your thoughts in that moment, the surroundings. They're really key things, because as I said, to keep banging on about it, but being in the moment is a big part of it, because usually a lot of the overwhelming stuff is when you're getting carried away, thinking about what you've done, or that thing that happened, and whatever else, or it's thinking about what's coming up, oh my god, I've got to go and do that thing, or bring yourself back in the moment and realise that this is where you are now. There's no need to be, you don't need to be worked up. I know that's sort of contradictory in saying you feel what you feel, but it's
But when you sometimes rationally think about things, you realise it's not.
No, and equally it can work the other way. Like I said, I would rationalise things and be like, well, I don't need to feel that because there's no reason for it. But just bring yourself back on, just ground yourself, and you can Google mindfulness, and you can employ a lot of your own techniques, anything that works for you. Just to end as well, contact lines.
Yes.
And again, these we've tried to focus on the ones that don't require diagnosis. So there are a lot of lines. Phone lines and email addresses and stuff that do deal with people who have been diagnosed, that do live with a condition. Yeah. But there's also some that don't. There's also some that just deal with your emotions, your feelings. Yeah. So on top of, I would say, if you have someone that you can confide in, do. Build that relationship, encourage it. Yeah. And I know I'm a weird advocate for that because I don't practice it, but on the small occasions that I have, it's wonderful.
Absolutely.
But the lines that we would like to mention is a line called CALM. It's Campaign Against Living Miserably. It's specifically, unfortunately, for men between the ages of 15 and 35. And the number is 0800 58 58 58. And you can call them it's an everyday thing. It's Monday to Sunday. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure you can call them at all hours. Google it if you're not sure, but 0800 58 58 58. If you're aged between 15 and 35 and a male and you're just feeling low or anything like that, or you're feeling anxious, give those guys a call. Let them just talk. Mind, you've got the number for Mind, or have I got the number for Mind?
You've got the number
I've got the number for Mind. That's what you call an organisation right there. Mind 0300 123 3393. That's for anyone. Yeah. There's no demographic limit on that. It's anyone who's feeling anything. Again, they're really about promoting emotional communication. So you can call them up at any time of day, just if you're feeling anything. And finally, and this is I think one that's quite a good one, they're called SANE. And they're not just for people who are suffering and with conditions, but it's also a line that works for carers, but not just carers, just relatives, people who know people who are in that position, who work with people who are suffering. And it's a great one to call up them, and you can discuss your own feelings on it, as well as they can give you sort of tips and stuff on how to deal with it. And that number is 0300 304 7000. And that's a great one. Like I said, you don't necessarily have to be suffering. You can just know someone that's suffering. And if you do find yourself feeling useless as a partner because you can't help and you don't know what to do, give those guys a call and see if they can try and talk you through it, and maybe make you realise that actually you're not useless. Just being there, just existing near them is a big thing. Yeah.
So yeah, guys, we've discussed a lot in this one, and it's quite heavy. It's definitely not light-hearted, but we appreciate if you have made it this far.
And I'm not going to offer out anything
and I hope if you have listened that there's something you can take from it. But even if not, spread the word on this, because I would say it's probably the biggest issue facing society as a whole at the moment.
Yeah, and don't do what I do. Don't listen in and think, and maybe you think, oh, they are suffering. I'm not, they are. Don't do that, man.
No.
Acknowledge and accept your own emotions. Acknowledge and accept your own thoughts and feelings.
Absolutely.
Let's go back to the Robert Webb thing.
Yeah.
Just because we might be standing here with 2 broken legs doesn't mean your hairline fracture or your sprained ankle don't need attending.
Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, guys, make sure if you know anyone that needs help, or if you need help, you know, reach out. Help is there. And if you ever want to get in contact with us, please feel free. We're more than happy to talk to you, and we will always respect anonymity.
And we I do know and have worked closely with a number of healthcare professionals, therapists and counsellors, having begun training as one myself.
Yeah.
We are in a position to hook you up, for want of a better term. We can put you in the right direction, in contact with people that are in better positions to help. But other than that, I think, and this seems really weird for me to do this at the end of such a sort of sombre podcast, but like it, subscribe it, rate it.
Yeah.
That's a big thing that we're just finding out. We're new on this journey, but ratings count.
Yeah.
So wherever you listen to it, on Spotify, on iTunes,
please
YouTube,
rate it.
It does go a long way for us.
Yeah, and I think the last thing I'd like to say is to remember that there is strength in vulnerability.
It's absolutely, it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
This idea that we are, here's the thing, okay doesn't exist. We're all in some way, we're all at varying levels of disarray.
Yeah.
Some are more severe than others, but, you know, just talking about it makes a big difference. Just accepting it in yourself makes a big difference.
Yeah. Alright guys, well thank you for listening, and
it's been a tough one. We'll come back with something a bit lighter next week.
Yeah.
And we'll try and bring something else to the table, a little bit lighter. But thank you for sticking this one out.
Take care of yourselves.
Yeah, take care of yourselves.
Bye.